Hello, my name is Emmy Johnson, and I'm Principal Analyst and founder of Skylight Research. Skylight Research is located in the US, and we track microwave market trends. We also look at quarterly market shares and 5-year forecasts. On top of that, we're also looking at more sustainable ways in how to make mobile networks more sustainable, in addition to looking at NTN solutions. So I would like to just, before we get started, I would like to first thank 5G Americas for inviting me to speak at the summit. Um, and I thought it would be interesting maybe if we talked about how 5G is making mobile networks more sustainable. So I will go ahead and share my slides. So we all know the climate issues that are facing us. And in 2020, the EIA had stated that energy use will increase by 50% by 2050. And there's just no way that the current power grid worldwide can hold that amount of energy, even with renewable energy sources coming online. So what really needs to happen is we need to get more renewable energy sources coming up, and we also need to make our current products more energy efficient. And that's kind of what 5G is working on as well. So, and the other thing that's happening is just increasing landfills. So we have increasing waste going from increased consumerism worldwide and also increasing electronic waste. Our society globally is becoming more digital, and that means more electronic devices, and that means more devices in the landfill. And these just don't break down very quickly. Another issue is finite clean water sources. So, what's with that? With the extreme weather patterns, there's drought, and then there's flooding, and it's just exacerbated by the flooding, because what happens is the water sources are drying up in the drought, and then the flood comes and it washes everything, and the soil is so dry it's not able to absorb the water. It washes everything into the water source, contaminating the clean water sources. So there's the compounding issues that are creating challenges for the world. So how is 5G doing this? Well, for one, they're making networks more energy efficient. And one, they're doing this by virtual power plants. So on a base station, that it's always connected to a power grid. But in a lot of cases now they're making it also where there's a battery backup or there's solar panels. So there's alternative sources for energy. And then during high energy times, the network can get off of the grid to alleviate some of the usage and use its own power source. Another thing that it can do is in the case of load balancing, a lot of power grids have load balancing where they will pay users to get off the grid. And so they can get paid to get off the grid. And in addition to that, they can also use their extra energy from either their battery or their solar power that has been stored and give that energy to another user. So now they've become like an alternative utility provider momentarily, and they can get yet another revenue stream. So the virtual power plants are doing a lot in order to reduce the pressure on the power grid, reduce the carbon footprint by having these renewable power sources. And Nokia and Ericsson are two companies that have talked about this quite a bit. Another way where 5G networks are becoming more energy efficient is by smart spectrum utilization. And it's an AI-driven approach. And it's basically a management solution that will dynamically select which spectrum is the less congested. So when a packet of information is sent over a link, it will oftentimes drop. So it has to be resent several times. But on a congested spectrum, that takes even more times. It has to be sent even more times. And every time the packet is sent, energy is expended. So by moving to a less crowded spectrum or one that would work better for the packet, then you're reducing the energy load on that link. And Ericsson and Samsung have options for these. Ericsson and Samsung have options for these for this application. So another example is deep sleep mode. So as I told you before, I track microwave radios, and Nokia and Ericsson are two microwave leaders. And they and what happens here is in deep sleep mode, they can shut down extra radios during low traffic periods. So the networks have become higher and higher capacity. And it used to be where there was one radio on one end of the link and one radio on the other end of the link. But with more capacity, there's now multiple radios on the end of each link because the link is engineered to support the highest amount of traffic during any one time during the day. But in that 24-hour period, you're not going to need four radios on one end and four radios on the other end. So you can shut down the three radios and just have one radio on each end looking for traffic. And what's even better is you can add in AI and machine learning, and then the network becomes smart and it can predict when the traffic is going to drop or when the traffic is going to increase again, and it can be ready. It can wake those radios up ahead of time, and it can be ready for that traffic pattern. And then there's also just advanced chip technology. And really most innovation starts at the chip level. And the chips are super impressive. They've gotten much smaller, so they take up a much smaller footprint, which means they use fewer energy or fewer of the Earth's resources. They also have integrated more features into them. So they're able to do multiple functions instead of just one or two functions. And the examples of chip companies are NVIDIA, Marvell, Qualcomm, Intel, AMD, and Nokia also has their own chips. So another way that 5G is helping make the world more sustainable is by reducing the carbon footprint. So with cloud-based core and cloud-native Open RAN, they're software-based approaches, which means they automatically take up less physical footprint and a lower carbon footprint than hardware, because hardware is a much larger option. But by shifting the RAM processors to the core, energy for the processors are maximized because when they aren't processing the RAN functions, they're able to run other applications during non-peak times. So you're able to leverage the set of processors for both the core and the RAN instead of just having one set of processors on the RAN and one set of processors on the core. You're able to combine those, and then again, it takes up less carbon footprint because it takes up fewer chips. And there's a lot of downtime in a base station, kind of as we talked before, where they're over-engineered for the highest capacity times. A study by the NGMN Alliance looked at European networks and found that 80% of cell sites carry 20% of the traffic, while 10% of the cell sites carry 50% of the traffic. So there's a lot of cell sites that are sitting idle. So by pooling the resources onto the cloud, you're able to reduce the overall energy consumption. And almost every vendor has a cloud-based solution, and most have an Open RAN solution as well. But Samsung and Mavenir are two of the standouts. So another way to reduce carbon footprint is through circularity. And circularity reduces the electronic waste, it minimizes the environmental impact on Earth's resources, and it also extends the product's life. And two companies have done a pretty good job at this, Samsung and Nokia. And by the way, these aren't the only two. Ericsson's also done very well. I mean, most companies have sustainability at their forefront. So anyway, though, with Samsung, the Galaxy Upcycling at Home program, they're trialing it. And right now it's in the UK, the US, and Korea. And what it does, it lets users through a software upgrade, it lets them take their old Galaxy smartphone, and by performing a software upgrade on it, it can make it into a smart home IoT device. So that IoT device can be used for like a baby monitor. It can be used for a monitor to watch your pet when you're not at home. But and there's also other applications it can be used for as well. But by extending the product's life cycle, you're reducing the waste in the landfill. So so they're not buying an additional IoT device for a baby monitor. They're able to use an already existing product. And Nokia is the other company. Nokia's foundation was built on sustainable goals. So it's no surprise that they've leaned so heavily into circularity. And by 2030, they are planning to have 95% circularity in their operational waste. And this is defined as waste from the office, the labs, product take back, installation, and manufacturing. And so that is going to reduce the landfill and then also conserve the Earth's natural resources. Another way that vendors can recycle their products is by rehoming their base stations. So for example, maybe one operator is upgrading their network and they don't need these base stations anymore. Maybe they're like a 3G base station or a 4G base station and they're upgrading to 5G. But maybe there's another network in another part of the world, or maybe there's even a network within that operator's same area that needs more coverage. And so they can move those base stations into that other area where maybe not the latest, greatest technology is used, but it's still an upgrade from what they had. So another way to reduce carbon footprint is through remote working and fixed wireless access. And the broadband connections are improving every day through higher capacity and then also through techniques like network slicing for quality of service. And broadband is extending more and more into rural and less densely populated areas. And that's important because one, it's not only helping those businesses in that area, but it's also promoting remote learning in areas where education wasn't previously possible. And that's important not only for the individual, but it's important for the country because as an individual's education increases, they also increase their earning power. And when this is multiplied by multiple individuals and cities, then eventually it's going to rise to the top and the country is going to raise its GDP. So it's really important just for the health and the growth and vitality of the country. And then, of course, we all know that remote working and remote learning, especially in urban areas where you have to commute, that by working from home and dialing in that you're reducing the carbon footprint. So the last one is Internet of Things. And with Node B Internet of Things, there's really two examples that I wanted to talk about. One is smart agriculture and the other is smart cities. So with smart agriculture, there's a lot of different applications that can be used. There's for the first one is, for example, you can put sensors into the soils throughout your crops. So, and these sensors can monitor the condition of the soil. It can tell you whether it's too wet, it's too dry, maybe it's lacking some nutrients, maybe it needs more phosphorus, or it's more nitrogen, whatever it may be, that these sensors will remotely be able to tell the farmer, and then the farmer can know like how to better manage their crop and how to improve their yields, because they're not just saturating the entire crop with irrigation, for example, or they're not just mass spraying fertilizer onto the entire crop where not all the crop needs it. Another example is with weeds and pesticides. So, for example, there's machines that can go through AI, they can figure out which plants are meant to be there and which plants are weeds. And then they can do they can spray insecticides precisely on just the weed, instead of where it is today, they have these crop dusters and they just cover the entire crop. And that's important to me. I think that's really important. And it's a great innovation because it really reduces the toxicity load on those plants. And it also reduces the amount of pesticides that are going into the ground. Because as we talked about before, then again, when the rains come, all those pesticides and fertilizers get washed into water sources, and it can contaminate the water source, and then that creates a whole nother set of issues to deal with. And Telefonica in Latin America is doing a lot with smart agriculture. So the other example I want to give you is smart cities. And smart cities can be a number of different things. It can be smart streetlights, it can be IoT-based waste management systems. It can be connecting schools for a more improved educational experience. So for example, if there's a more expensive online education enhancement, then schools can share that across several different schools, and it improves the education experience for their students. And then also can do routine functions like utility meter reading. But the smart streetlight example that I wanted to give you is in Copenhagen, and they have replaced they replace their traditional streetlights with LED smart streetlights. And these new streetlights are able to, one, be remotely monitored, so they can tell if there's a light that's staying on and taking up too much energy, or they can tell if there's a broken light that's not coming on. Another thing that it can do is they can be scheduled. So for example, during the day, they can be scheduled to come off. And then as the sun starts to set, maybe the light is a little bit dimmer. And then as it completely goes down, then the light is much brighter. And again, the same thing happens when the sun rises. Their main goal is to make it more AI, so where it can monitor or where it can sense motion. So for example, the lights would go to its dimmest possibility, but then at, say, for example, like at 3 a.m., they're very dim, but then they sense motion. And so they'll come on to make the street safe for whoever's walking down that street. So anyway, that's my presentation. I hope that you found those examples interesting. I think the mobile industry is doing amazing things in terms of just connectivity and then also sustainability. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, as well as my email below, which is Emmy@Skylight Research, and my phone number is there as well. All right, thanks so much.